Welcome, everyone. Before we dive into building autonomous agents and complex API integrations, we need to master the foundation. Let's get started on the fundamental checklist for interacting with Claude. Welcome. Before we build advanced AI agents or automate our entire workflow, we absolutely must master the fundamentals of chatting with Claude. What exactly is Claude? It is a large language model, a highly sophisticated pattern recognition engine. When you use the chat interface or the messages API, you are providing text, and Claude is predicting the best possible continuation based on its training. Why start here? Because treating Claude like a simple Google search will give you generic, mediocre results. Instead, think of it as a brilliant but new colleague. You must communicate clearly. At its core, the chat mechanism is stateless. This means Claude doesn't inherently remember what you said 5 minutes ago. The interface passes the entire history back into the current context on every single turn. Let's master this foundation. This flowchart illustrates the fundamental chat loop. You, the user, submit a prompt to the interface. The interface bundles your new message and, crucially, the entire history of the conversation and sends it to Claude's processing engine. Claude analyzes this full context and streams a response back to you. Understanding that every single turn involves this full context transfer is your first step to mastering AI chat. Now, let's talk about your most critical skill, writing the perfect prompt. Vague inputs like write a blog post force Claude to guess what you want. You must stop making Claude read your mind. A high-quality, engineered prompt relies on 4 pillars: context, specificity, format, and constraints. You need to provide the background, state exactly what you want, dictate how it should look, and set boundaries like word counts or forbidden phrases. If you want a souffle, don't just ask for food. Give Claude the exact recipe requirements. For an advanced deep dive, professionals use few-shot prompting. This means embedding actual examples of what good output looks like directly into your initial chat message. This instantly trains Claude on your specific style and format requirements. Look at this comparison diagram. On the left path, a vague prompt forces the AI model into a guessing game, which inevitably results in generic, unhelpful output. On the right path, we engineer the prompt. We inject specific context and strict constraints. This guides the model's reasoning engine down a precise, narrow path, delivering the perfect, targeted output on the very first try. As your chat progresses, you are building what we call a context window. This is Claude's active working memory. Every time you ask a follow-up question, Claude references the previous messages in that specific thread. This is fantastic for building complex ideas step by step. But there is a dangerous trap: context rot. If you keep talking in the same thread about coding, then switch to dinner recipes, then to legal advice, Claude gets confused. The active memory becomes bloated with irrelevant noise, diluting the model's attention. How do we fix this? By actively managing our session. If you change topics, start a brand new chat. If you need to keep the topic, but the chat has become a marathon session, ask Claude to summarize the progress so far and use that summary as the starting point for a fresh thread. Here is the life cycle of a professionally managed conversation. We start a thread and progress from turn 1 to turn 20. As context accumulates, we hit a cognitive limit where focus dilutes. Instead of pushing forward and getting per answers, we hit a decision node. We summarize the critical information, extract it, and inject it into a brand new, clean thread. This resets our token usage and sharpens the AI's focus. Let's elevate your chat from a general assistant to a specialized expert. This is done through role-playing, or what developers call system prompts. By default, Claude is a highly capable but conversational generalist. If you need rigorous security analysis or creative copywriting, a generalist tone isn't enough. You must explicitly assign an identity. By starting your prompt with "act as a senior cybersecurity architect," you instantly shift Claude's internal probability engine. It drops the generic vocabulary and adopts the tone, constraints, and reasoning patterns of that specific profession. When building professional applications, this role is placed in the system prompt, a special instruction block that sits above the conversation and acts as an unbreakable rulebook for how the AI must behave during the entire session. This diagram demonstrates the power of personas branching from the base LLM. When we inject a system prompt, we can route the model's behavior into distinct experts. A senior developer persona yields a technical tone with code focus. A creative marketer yields persuasive copy. A legal analyst enforces a formal, risk-averse tone. You are shaping the mind of the AI before it generates a single word. Getting the right information is only half the battle. Getting it in the right format is the other. As a beginner, you must rigorously practice output control. If you need a checklist, explicitly ask for bullet points. If you are comparing software tools, command Claude to generate a markdown table. Why is this crucial? Because when you transition to practical applications, you need predictable, usable data, not a wall of text. We often use XML tags in our prompts to enforce this. You place your raw data inside data tags and your strict formatting rules inside format tags. This creates clear, unmissable boundaries for the AI. In advanced API workflows, developers use a feature called structured outputs, which mathematically forces Claude to reply in a strict, validated JSON schema, ensuring your software never breaks due to a conversational preamble. This architectural diagram shows the formatting pipeline. We feed raw, unstructured data into Claude's processing engine, but we simultaneously inject strict XML format rules. Instead of letting Claude decide how to present the answer, these rules force the output into a precise markdown table, a valid JSON object, or a clean bulleted list, ready for immediate use. We must have a serious conversation about AI limitations, specifically hallucinations. Because Claude is a probabilistic prediction engine, it can sometimes generate answers that sound incredibly confident but are entirely false. If you don't manage this, it will compromise your work. How do we fix it? First, always practice independent source verification for critical facts. Second, engineer your prompt to include an opt-out permission. Explicitly tell Claude, if the exact answer is not in this document, output strictly, I do not know. This simple sentence relieves the model's inherent pressure to invent a helpful answer. For complex logic, use chain of thought prompting. Command Claude to think step by step before providing the final answer. Exposing the internal reasoning process allows the model to catch its own logical flaws before they become hallucinations. Observe this safety state diagram. When a prompt enters Claude, we force it through a chain of thought node to think step by step. Next, it hits a critical data check. Is the fact actually in the provided context? If yes, it routes to a verified output. If no, because we provided permission, it routes to a safe fallback, stating, I don't know. This architecture prevents the system from taking dangerous leaps of faith. Let's combine everything into a real-time, highly practical use case, the meeting synthesizer. Imagine you have a messy, raw transcript from a 1-hour team meeting. A beginner would just paste it and type summarize this, resulting in a paragraph of fluff. But you are a professional. Your prompt will assign a persona, act as a strict executive assistant. You will set a constraint, extract only actionable items. You will provide the context by pasting the text inside, transcript, XML tags. Finally, you control the output, format the result as a markdown table with columns for assignee, task, and deadline. Look at the sample JSON code on the slide. This is exactly how it looks in the API. This transforms a disorganized chat into a highly efficient, repeatable business tool, guaranteeing a perfect result every single time. This sequence diagram is your blueprint for a perfect workflow. The user sends a raw transcript into the prompt engine. We don't just pass it through. We wrap it with a persona, strict constraints, and format rules using XML tags. Claude processes this highly engineered payload and returns exactly what was requested, a clean, actionable markdown table, bypassing all the irrelevant conversational noise. Let's wrap up with your ultimate fundamental checklist. Before you hit send on any prompt, ask yourself, did I establish a clear role? Did I provide sufficient context and background? Have I set strict constraints on what to avoid? Did I specify the exact output format? And finally, did I give Claude an out if it doesn't know the answer? If you can answer yes to these 5 questions, you have officially graduated from a beginner to a proficient AI collaborator. Skipping these steps is the root cause of 90% of AI frustrations. Mastering this checklist is the absolute prerequisite for moving on to building autonomous agents, writing code integrations, and automating your workflows. Do not skip the basics. To continue your journey to mastery, I invite learners to like, subscribe, and visit quicktechie.com for premium certification prep, including Q&A banks, full ebooks, audiobooks, full-length training, and interview guides. Our final diagram shows your progression path to mastery. By strictly applying the checklist-defining role, context, constraints, and format, you create a convergence point of predictable, high-quality outputs. Only with this rock-solid, reliable foundation beneath you can you safely ascend to the peak of AI development, building and deploying advanced agentic workflows.